That was a view coming in from Ambit Capital. Let's welcome in Mayuresh Joshi now. We have been focusing in on what Infosys has been saying. Mayuresh, the new CEO is focusing completely on digital, how clients can stick if digital needs are fulfilled. I don't think that is something which the street was not expecting.
Oh, absolutely, Pankaj. I think digital is the way to go about. And if you look at what I've been reading through the ticker, 25% is what is the contribution of digital towards the overall top line. But a large element in terms of adding on to the investments that they've done specifically towards this subsegment and the kind of expectations that in terms of adding on to the investments that they've done specifically towards this subsegment and the kind of expectations that the management has built in. Again, I think the transformational deal wins specifically on the digital front will go a long way going ahead. Again, I think in terms of management commentary, specifically the expectations of revenue growth of 6 to 8% in constant currency terms, I think it's going to be more focused on these areas, which will obviously mean that the margin hit that the management and the company is expected to take will be at the expense of probably going after and retaining far more better and disruptive clients within the BFSI space and increasing the outlook from these various subsegments.
In terms of, what essentially, is the thing to watch out for. Now, there's no doubt that Infosys in the last 10 years has clearly underperformed TCS. So has most of the other IT names. But do you think that the new CEO, with the sort of sentiment that is there towards the technology pack, it could act as a very big catalyst, say, in the next few days?
It would, and I think typical parallels are drawn between how TCS has performed on the digital front at a run rate in excess of 30-35% with $4 billion probably coming through on that count. But Infosys has also a large element of legacy projects, and if I do a simple comparative check on a 5 and a 10-year period, the landscape in terms of the dollar revenue growth, obviously TCS has done a tad bit better of what Infosys had probably believed to achieve. So a large element in terms of the CEO's aspirations in terms of accelerated growth, in terms of the digital investment, in terms of execution, and having substantial accelerated growth over the next few years. I think if he's able to successfully do that, my own sense is that the kind of underperformance that Infosys had given out in terms of numbers, that can show some amount of traction. But I think one really needs to wait and watch over the next few quarters in terms of the shifting of momentum specifically towards all these key variables.
Mayuresh, they've also set a 3-year strategy to achieve all these objectives that Salil Parekh has highlighted. Do you think they can actually pull it off in 3 years? And what are some other big triggers for the company, apart from, of course, the digital initiatives that they're pushing in a big way? What else is it that one can look forward to?
So to a large bit, what you've probably seen in terms of the key parameters, the attrition actually moved up a tad bit. But a large element in terms of how BFSI will perform, because that also forms a huge chunk in terms of their subsegmental contribution, is something to be watched out for. The capital allocation policy was more or less in line in terms of returning 70% of the free cash flows. So in that bit, again, the kind of cash flows that the company throws out, I think that is one encouraging sign in terms of investors. But again, I think as Mr. Parekh was saying, I think navigating our next is his aspiration as he sees it. So the execution of strategy around the 4 pillars and specifically scaling up the digital business is something that will probably go a long way in terms of reported dollar revenue growth. And again, as I was mentioning earlier, I think the core technological landscape through all the different means, whether it's AI, whether it's automation, probably looking at, as I said, getting down the attrition levels, improving the utilization levels, and also localizing markets like the US, Europe, and Australia. I think if all these factors start coming through together, all these synergies will help in achieving better dollar revenue growth over the next few quarters.
Great, Mayuresh, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for chatting with us about what lies ahead for Infosys and how this guidance can actually impact the stock move tomorrow. That we'll have to wait and watch. Moving